Welcome, any and all, to the Movie Club Collective. I'm your host, John Olson, and this is the podcast where each week we pick a new movie that has come and gone from the theaters, and we review it collectively. This week's movie is Atonement, directed by Joe Wright. Came out in 2007, running time of 2 hours and 3 minutes. This was based on a book by Ian McEwan and adapted by Christopher Hampton, starring Keira Knightley, James McAvoy, and Cerise Ronan, with music by Dario Marianelli. And joining me to help review this movie, we have Jose Venutolo. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming in a little rough, but just deal with it, folks. It's Skype that we use. And joining us also once again is Nick Landa, screenwriter.
Thank you again.
And with him in his screen, we have Cameron Munson, a good friend of all of ours. We all went to film school, and so this is a nice chance to kind of hang out and talk films. So we'll be reviewing the movie over 5 categories, and in each category we'll go through them one at a time. We have 5 points each that we can give it. You guys can shout out numbers whenever you feel like, I guess, and we can kind of talk each other up or down, or kind of however it feels organic.
Five.
Okay, so we know Cameron's. All right, so I'm gonna go ones. No.
You said what you like, so I just
Yeah. So
I'm feeling such as a deja vu right now.
Don't call it out. So a lot of times we like to start with kind of your experience with the film. Had you seen it before? Cameron, since you're giving 5, you want to kick us off with that?
I've seen this film many times, probably about 15 times. I saw it 7 or 8 times in the theater when it came out.
It's a lot.
Like a different person every time. And it was right before I went to film school too. So it was one of those movies that I was just, I romanticized it in my head. I'm like, this is what an excellent movie is that's made, in our, the time that I'm growing up, the time that I'm really, my passion for filmmaking was
your formative.
I was really starting to understand what it was. And then I saw a movie like this, and it was like, this is what, I want to make movies for.
Gotcha. It's eye-opening. How about you, Nick?
I'd never seen it before, and I saw it for the first time yesterday with Cameron.
Okay.
At the apartment.
All right. So did you have any sort of preconceptions of the movie going in?
I thought it was going to be a straight up like romance Titanic kind of thing. Because that's what I was just thought. I thought it was going to be like Reservation Road or something. I mean, again, I haven't seen Reservation Road. That might be like a hardcore
completely
action.
Different thing.
Okay. I thought that was going to be like a straight up romance, and it's a drama first, and then I'd say there's just as much suspense and mystery as there is romance, almost. It's really good.
All right, yeah, it's also my first time seeing it. I'd heard of it, obviously, but this was the first time I had a chance to get around to it. I really didn't know much going in, other than that it was like kind of during World War II. I might have actually thought it was World War I, just because of like the helmets and stuff. But I didn't know much beyond that. It was like, I guess, a romance to some extent. So I went in pretty cold to this movie. How about you, Jose?
Well, I saw this movie, I think in theaters when it came out, and I've seen it a couple of times after that. It's always been a very impressive movie to me. It was a movie that I liked originally, and watching it for the purposes of the show allowed me to see it with different eyes, and actually got me to like it even more.
Very cool. All right, so let's just get into it. Our first category is going to be production value. So in this, we're going to cover cinematography as well as sort of costume, set, and the shots themselves, I think, will be the best place to put that kind of stuff. So, I guess you want to... I'll let you kick us off, Cameron.
The word that comes to mind when it encapsulates all those different categories is meticulous for me. Joe Wright, I don't know if you guys have seen his other films, but he did Pride and Prejudice. He also did Anna Karenina, so he's very particular about every little detail that's in his shots.
Gotcha.
And down, from from the wide sweeping shot on the beach to even just the simple shots of Keira Knightley, going in and out of focus in the mirror, to the costume design with her green dress, which is one of my all-time favorite costume pieces ever.
It's a nice dress.
It's an amazing dress.
And the greens really pop in this film also, so...
Yeah, the lighting, I think you said the lighting. Like the soft lighting. I loved the whole scene with when Robbie and Cecilia are having a cigarette together, but they're not together. How the elements of their production design too, even though it's soft and out of focus, are conveying characters. So I feel like so many different elements in the production design itself are characters on their own. All of that, all of those things encapsulating turned into just perfect production design.
All right. How about you, Jose? Thoughts?
I mean, production. This movie it's like one of its strongest elements is definitely production value to me. It's a movie that is a period piece that never pulls. That I haven't noticed a single moment in which it pulls me out, and I'm aware that I'm watching a reenactment of a time. Like it honestly makes me feel that I'm flying the wall during those times and in those places. And that's difficult to do with a movie that has a $30 million budget. Like this movie had very ambitious things that it did perfectly. Choreograph is like as Cameron says, meticulous. It's like every detail has been taken care of. So when you have scenes like the scene in the beach, there is this long tracking shot. That I've talked to many people that think that it's actually a pretentious shot, that I don't feel that way because, you go to movies to see things that are away from reality. It does compromise a little the tone in which the movie has been set, but to choreograph something like that and to make such an incredible representation of what I consider could be like one of Dante's circles of hell, in which people are just going crazy, in which all sorts of emotions that are being like portrayed during that choreograph, and to have the fact to choreograph that movement with like trained horses that know they need to die when this happens, like that's one thing is doing it with a person, another thing is including animals on this. It's a movie that really brings like the production value like really, really up.
Yeah. How about you, Nick?
I thought the production design was perfect in this film. I mean, anything I could think of, whether it's costume, the locations, the cinematography especially was one of the best I've seen, and the lighting was fantastic. I definitely don't think that long shot was pretentious. I would disagree with people because I think if you were to break up that shot into just normal shots, you wouldn't get the scope of all the suffering and like all the craziness. Like they cover so much ground. If you broke that editing. Yeah, it wouldn't have worked. I thought so it would have been pretentious if it had no meaning, if it was just a dude, But I thought it was very well done. And the DP I'd never heard of. It's like Seamus something. But Seamus Garvey, yeah. Which he's done a bunch of stuff, like Avengers and a lot of big budget stuff. But I thought it was perfect. I'd give it a 5 out of 5, easily.
All right. Yeah, I echo a lot of those same thoughts. I agree with you that, like, yeah, it would be pretentious if it was just moving around and it was kind of like blah, but it's so well choreographed. There isn't a second if we're talking that tracking shot, there's not a second that goes by where something crazy isn't happening that's telling you about the environment that they're in. Yeah, you can only kind of imagine what it took to put all that together. Yeah, the production value is incredible. I think to some extent you can get sort of easy production value out of some of the locations, particularly like the manor. Like, I'm guessing they didn't build that manor for the shoot, but then when you get into sort of the other locations, into the war scenes, the beach, it's not the beach itself isn't Dunkirk, right? What is it?
I don't think it's
because they
Dunkirk.
go to Dunkirk from
it goes
there.
yeah.
But anyway, the beaches that led to Dunkirk, just phenomenal in terms of like the tactile quality of it all. The only thing about the cinematography, the only knock I have, and it's just like a little personal thing, is the first half of the movie that takes place at the manor is very, like, every shot has pro mist on it.
I love it.
You love it? Yeah, it's always kind of flaring. I did like, though, that when they moved on from the manor house, that the pro mist goes away, and it like separates it into like this time in their lives that was magical, and like the way that she's remembering it. So I think it was appropriate. It's just something that I'm not a big fan of tons of smoke. I'm not a big fan of pro mist.
Well, then in the present, it's super sharp too.
Yeah, it's very sharp, and none of that's.
Well, I think one of the reasons why they have so much promise is because it's also they reference it so much in the beginning of the first act how hot it is, and
That's true.
promise and that stuff literally makes me feel like I'm experiencing the summer weather with them. So I think that might be something behind.
I think it's a strong enough directorial decision that that I won't hold against it. Yeah, it's hard to give it any knocks, in terms of production value. So yeah, I guess I go with a 5 also. Does anybody have a differing? Are we going 5?
I think everyone's 5, right?
I think this
Everybody's
one
a 5.
I think this one's an easy 5.
Nick mentioned something that I think that if we go to the other categories, we might not be able to go back to, but the lighting. I mean, not only cinematography, the lighting, but the fact that how they use with the character of Saoirse Ronan, how they use the fact that light is hitting her to tell you if she's telling the truth or not. Mm-hmm. So you see, like when she's being interrogated, she's being like by the police. The moment she starts lying is when the lights dim down in a way that you don't notice it, but she is lit as the moment, like when she starts telling the lie, then it's only her and everything is shadow. And then from that moment on, every time that she's trying to remember what happened because she had convinced herself of that, there's always either a flickering light. There's always something that says, like, she can't discern right now between truth and lying. And I thought that was like it was mild, and that's why it was wonderful.
Well, I think going along with that too, there's a lot of shots of her, reflected shots of her, whether it's through glass, through a mirror, or whatever. It's always her, like, these reflective moments of her,
And I think that's what's great about Romola Gary, who played Bryony at 18, and then Vanessa Redgrave, is like they took that reflective part from the performance from Saoirse Ronan when she was 13, which is just another part of the film being so cohesive over that period of time, is that they all completely understood the reflective nature of her character. 100%. There was not one little mishap or hiccup about understanding that.
Yeah.
I got one gripe with the cinematography. One gripe.
Oh, really?
What's that?
Oh, yeah.
Aspect ratio. I wish it was 235 as opposed to 185. I think it would have looked even, and it's a period. Every shot looks great. I was just like, man, I think it'd look even more picturesque or something.
Some of the wides, the outdoor wides, like the one where he's at sunrise. And it's like, wow, what a gorgeous shot. Yeah, you want to see it panorama, right?
Yeah, I want to see it wide, yeah. That was my only thing, but it's not enough to take a point away.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I feel like anything we can do is very nitpicky in terms of production value. They did a lot with not a very big budget, estimated $30 million budget. This movie looks like a lot more than that. So let's move on, I guess, to sound and music. Mm-hmm. So who wants to kick off for this one? Okay.
Go ahead.
I was telling Nick when we watched the film last night. It's one of those films I will never forget this score. Like when I think, when you mention a movie title, there's a handful of movies that I can immediately think of the score and exactly how it sounds, and this is one of those movies. And how the sound of the keyboard makes its way into the rest of the film, even though she's not always. I mean, you don't even see her typing, in the shots, of Cecilia when she's a nurse, or when Robbie's, the harmonica part. When he's, experiencing the war. All of it kind of blends in, and every character has their own theme, but it feels like all of it comes together without
what am I trying to say? They all comes together without making it feel like you're separating everybody. It kind of connected all of the characters with all of their different situations. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, because Robbie's in the war, Cecilia's a nurse, Bryony is a nurse, and at the very, very end, when Bryony's old, it pulled all of it together, and it made just like the orchestra of the entire soundtrack just pulled it together.
Yeah, I did like the working in the the working in the typewriter keys into the music, and like when it first does it at the beginning of the film, how like the keys themselves are actually a tune. That was very very inventive in terms of original score. I only noticed one song that wasn't original. I wish I knew the name of the song. It's a classical piece where
I remember hearing.
Yeah, not Cecilia. What's the younger daughter's name, Cameron?
Bryony.
Yeah, Bryony. When Bryony's just sort of held the hand of the French guy who dies in the hospital, there's just like a beautiful classical piece that comes in there. It was one of the few that I noticed was not part of the score, and I think they saved it for a very good moment. I don't know. There was a couple times when the typewriter song came in the middle where I feel like it was a little too loud in terms of attention. So like the music was like kind of like calling my attention.
Overpowering, you mean?
What's that?
Like overpowering?
Yeah, not like overpowering, but just like a little distracting from what's going on to like I'm thinking about the music now. Whereas it only happened a couple times where it just took me out maybe a little bit because most of the time it does blend very well, and I think it does. I
can think of the exact moments that you're talking about too, because I think of them too, but I just personally like them.
Okay. How about you, Jose?
I'm siding with Cameron in this sense, but I'm glad that you mentioned that about the typewriter, because I remember that the first time I saw this movie, I heard typewriter being used as part of the score, and I thought it was phenomenal because like she said, I mean all the connotations that it has with it, and when I was watching it this time, was trying to figure out if there was another level to it, like is the typewriter coming only to remind us that what we're looking at is her typing this story through her life, because through her entire life she's been like shaping this story, so it's like part of it. But I do agree that with you on the fact that it pulls you out. It does pull you out. You become aware of it. You start thinking about it, and I don't know if that was on purpose or not. I like it the same way that Cameron said, like he liked it, but I acknowledge the fact that it was it does break a little the fourth wall. It reminds you that you're watching a film. It takes you a little out. You start paying attention to it. But maybe that is the purpose. Like I'm watching the film this time and saying like maybe this is the moment in which he's gonna jump into like the last time that you hear it is when she's being interviewed in the film.
I do think I might appreciate it more on a second watch. That stuff. But on a first watch, going in cold, I found it just a tad distracting in a couple instances.
No, I understand.
But yeah, a lot of it's very beautiful. Not a lot to say about the sound design. A number of other movies we've watched on this were much stronger in this department. The music is very good. And there are some really cool moments that use the sound. There's one, I don't know that it does anything story-wise, and it's just kind of a neat trick where the music's playing and we see Cecilia at the piano, and then she plucks one of the strings.
Oh yeah, and
end the song. That was kind of a cute thing. Again, though, I think it calls attention to it a little bit. Yeah, beyond the music, there's not a whole lot in the sound that really wowed me.
Well, Brian did the same thing at the when they're all waiting to find the two boys. Brian, he's sitting at the piano, and she's also hitting a piano key, and it's leading the music into that scene as well. So I can't think of a third time that they used it, but I always it's one thing that I always appreciate too. Like every time that I see it, it is a neat trick. I like it a lot.
It's a neat trick, and it says that they were very aware of what they were going to do with the music before they shot it. Because so many times, the music comes in later, and like this is like it was obviously at least consideration that we want to do this because it's timed very well. Just in that like the shot sits for a minute before she does it. So I feel like it was very planned to blend that way. How about you, Nick?
I can imagine like that's got to be so hard. Like imagine trying to do that. Like as us as filmmakers, like being like, okay, wait, now you have to just move from the top of the piano, look at the flowers, and then take a beat, and then pluck. Like it's like that is such meticulous and exquisitely like pre-planned. It's the theater directing. It is very much theater directing. A lot of this movie is.
How about you, Nick?
It calls from that extensive rehearsal.
Yes.
I love this. Sound design, I agree with you. Like, I mean, nothing stood out, but I think that's a good thing. Like, I don't remember anything about sound design. I don't really have any notes about it. Nothing was bad, but music was amazing. And music is like super important to me in films. Love the whole typewriter sound thing. One thing I thought that was kind of interesting because I never read the book, but me and Cameron were talking about it, and he read it. And in the book, she was saying there's like a lot of like inner thought stuff in the novel. Like you're constantly hearing what people are thinking, and which they, obviously they could have done in this film, voiceover or whatever. I felt like the music kind of replaced that. I always felt like like the typewriter song. I really like it because it's very manic too. It's like it's like very quick and manic, and I think it really went with like what the people were thinking. You didn't really have to know their thoughts because the kind of music was telling you. I definitely agree. There were two moments I remember where it got a little loud and it was almost like intrusive on or something. But again, I think it was for a reason. It definitely made me forget about the visual and I was paying more attention to the audio. But I felt like it was for a reason. So I can't really knock it. But I definitely had that same experience where there was like two times where I was like, that's a little loud, a little. Much or it's I
think I'm gonna throw a 4 at this one just because I do really like the music. Sound design is something I pay attention to, particularly when watching movies for the show. Just because I've been doing a lot of sound design stuff recently, and so like my brain is kind of like I'm paying attention to it more than I used to. And so the design itself wasn't as stellar as sort of the music, and the mixing itself wasn't as good as sort of the composition that goes with it. So I think I'm just giving it I give a little ding for those reasons. Because if it was just on like purely the quality of the music itself, I'd give it a 5, and it does do a lot for the film. I just think in combination with kind of the rest of it, I'd give it a 4. How are you guys feeling about?
5, yeah.
Everybody's going.
Yeah.
Everybody's going 5.
Attention to this. I think next time I'll pay attention to more of the sound design. But since I can't remember anything, I gotta.
Well, I also specifically remember seeing it like 7 or 8 times in the theater, and it. I mean, you, John, you know much more about sound than I do. Like, I just know literally how it makes me feel. And there are some movies that are very quiet, and there are some that are overpowering. Like
And by no means that I hate this stuff.
I mean, it feels completely different, like watching it on a TV as opposed to hearing it in a theater.
That's true.
It's a completely different experience.
That's true. It's hard. And it's very hard to kind of compare the two. I only have kind of the Netflix edition to go off of.
So the first ding against Atonement.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry to be that. Sorry to be that guy. I know. Maybe it'll get 99. We'll see.
No. Not.
Okay. Let's go into editing now. I guess I'll start. I had some thoughts because I do like the editing in this film, and I like the sort of the circular nature of like going back and like revisiting scenes. It caught me off guard a little bit the first time when we revisit the fountain scene, and like it takes me to go, oh, we've seen this from the window, and now we're getting context. But I thought that was kind of a cool way to do it, to backtrack that way. Because, they could have easily have done it another way. but yeah, kind of circling back around to give us the different views was cool. So I give it points for that. It kind of that element kind of gets lost later in the movie, and I think that's more to do with the story doesn't call for it as much later. But Jose, you got thoughts on editing?
Yes. I'm trying to set this light, but it just keeps dying on me. So I guess I'm gonna be dark for a second. Yeah, I think like this. Then again, like, my thing about judging editing in a movie is that you, like, unless you were part of the production team, or unless you were like attached to the director in some sort of way, then you can't really discern when something is a directorial decision because it was shot intended to be edited that way, or it was the editor who brought a new perspective and then cut these scenes in a way
we can
that
only
was.
judge what the movie showed us.
Yes,
so.
correct. But I think that there are moments in which there's clearly like fast cuts happening. There's other moments that linger a lot, and I think that the moments where they choose to do either way support really well what is happening, especially when you have things that, and of course this is more directorial in that sense, but they are not meant to be together. Like everything around them, it's trying to separate them to the point that then you always have match cuts that goes from her to him or vice versa, in which they're doing opposite motions. Like she's jumping into the water, he's coming out of the water. He's looking at a plane, she's looking at the floor. You know, like there's always this juxtaposition that they are, by all intents and purposes, even driven by the movie or the way that the story is done, and the editing supported that. Like every time you see them from moving from one to another, they are doing an opposite motion, except when she starts kind of like giving them the kindness that she says at the end, that I'm gonna bring them together in my book, and that's when you probably don't see that much. But most of the other times, the editing just brings it right away. You think it's a cool cut. She's going into the water, she's coming out of the water, but it's also, supporting the fact that these people are always being torn apart by life, even by the editing.
How about you, Nick?
I really liked the editing. I thought it was super creative. The stuff in the beginning, especially that first time, the same thing happened to me. I was thrown off. I thought it took place after, and then once she grabbed the vase, I was like, oh, okay, and she started walking outside. I liked that stuff so much, of like it going forward, then going a little bit back, then forward, then a little bit back. I liked it so much. I do wish it had it throughout it, but again, like you were saying, I understand why they didn't do it. I mean, the characters were so separated. You didn't have other perspectives to see a certain scenario from. I definitely thought I liked the editing more in the beginning, but the editing throughout the whole thing made sense. I guess I just liked that stuff because it was different, and but it was a really gutsy film as far as editing and stuff, and yet as crazy as it was and gutsy at times, it was also very symmetrical. Like the first act of the movie, this story, and the second act, this time period, and third, So I thought it was really good. Whoever edited it, kudos for sure.
How about you, Cameron?
Well, I've been script supervising a lot lately, so part of the job of a script supervisor is to really keep in touch with the pace and what the director's intention for the pacing of the film to have the overall emotional impact that you're looking for at the end. And I don't think that there is a beat that they messed up on. One scene that is edited very, very simply, and they use the cutaway effect a couple times, but it's the scene when Robbie goes to meet Cecilia for coffee before he's getting sent off, and she has to go back to the hospital. He comes in, and it's quick flashes of him, and he sees her, and she's sitting down, and she's not even turned to him yet. And then it's more quick cuts back, and he takes a minute, and he goes back in, and then she's already standing up. And then moving into that actual scene of them sitting and having coffee, and him placing, her placing her hand on top of his, and the precise moments that they do cut, and they cut away from, he looks away to the women that are sitting behind him, and you cut to that. and it literally felt like I was him. Like that is, it was editing. It was edited perfectly. Just that simple sequence, and I think, that does have a lot to do with the direction of the scene, yes, but I think the simplicity of the editing, aside from, yes, I completely agree with you guys with the time jumps in the first act, particularly, but the editing of that, and then there was a scene at the end of the third act when Bryony goes to Cecilia's apartment, and Bryony looks out the window and it cuts away, and it's a woman, pushing a stroller, or like pushing a, cart in front of her. Those moments of editing, they could have cut away just a second sooner, and it would have taken you out. It wouldn't have made you feel like you were the character as much. And I think those simple moments are what help makes the movie have such an overall impact. So I really like the editing. I have no problems with it.
Like now that you mentioned that, it's interesting because it's not. It makes you feel that it's not a cutaway. They linger enough for you to understand this means something before they go back to it. It's like this is not just me cutting to this old lady because I need to tie these other two things. This is whatever she's seeing is impacting her. Now, the fact that you can discern what it means or not, that's a completely different proposition. But it lingers enough, as you say, in order to make you understand that it literally means something for the character, and then you start thinking about it. I think that's great too.
Yeah, I think the editors really understood that for the characters. So
yeah, if I want to get critical with it, and I do, the pace, like the job of the editing is to sort of control the pace of the film. And I think it's very helpful in the beginning when you could have these potentially sort of slow or laborious scenes, and it makes them, a little more frenetic and a little more energized. But I think that near the end of the film, I think that the pace demands to be slowed down a little bit, particularly in sort of the future scenes. There are some cuts that I feel like are there to kind of match what they've been doing, and I didn't feel were necessarily necessary, to be redundant.
Do you have like a specific example?
So yeah, like the one where they start to interview her and she's like, I need a break, I can't do it, and then we see that moment again, and I kind of wondered, like, was that necessary? I found myself wondering if those cuts were necessary. Like, would that scene have been less powerful with fewer cuts? I don't think so. So I was just wondering if, and like, it's easy to get carried away in a beautiful movie with lingering on beautiful shots too. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it felt gratuitous. The movie's not overly long, really. I don't think it overstays its welcome. So in terms of like density, like the majority of it has content. Maybe some of the shots are a little more than they need to be. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. You guys have any response to any of that?
I think it depends on how much you identify with each character. Because each character has those kind of lingering moments that I think you might be talking about.
Yeah, there's shots of, smoking or, just hanging out. Like even the one I mentioned earlier, the beautiful shot of him at sunset, it could have been shorter. It's a thoughtful moment, though. You want to let it breathe. I can see these arguments. Like there is a defense for a lot of these things.
I have some of those things I definitely get. I have a couple of little pacing stuff. But for me, I'm kind of, I'll get to that when we get to the story stuff. Because I have a little beef with the third act, but for me, I got to point the finger at the story. That's just how I see it versus the editor for that. But yeah, I think I have some similar things than what you're thinking, though, as far as the third act goes.
Yeah. How about you, Jose? Anything to add? Or do you want to just throw out your score?
I'm gonna go with a 5 again. I have no beef with this.
I'm also at a 5. I gotta give brownie points to this movie because 80% of films are just cut A to Z and very standard, and it just, I know editing is an invisible art, but so many films you see it and it's just, but this film definitely made me appreciate it at times, and I think that's so rare in films in films in general. So I got to give it a 5. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think I'll also go 5, just because I do think this is a movie that could have easily dragged.
Oh, totally.
And it doesn't. Like, I did find myself engaged throughout the whole affair. I feel like it does take its time with some of the shots a little later into the movie, so like you're already invested by that point in the characters and their journey. So I agree with that. Cameron, do I even have to ask? All right.
Still only ding.
Yeah, still only the one ding, right? This movie is tearing it up.
Don't worry. We're going through rough territory.
Let's do story, and this counts writing, so the dialogue, not just the overall story, but like the nitty gritty as well. You sound like you got some thoughts, Nick. Why don't you start?
Actually, it's still really good. I'm going to just start off and say I'm giving it a 4. So it's really good. The story is very good. I really liked it. It surprised me big time because I thought it was going to be a romance, and it gave me so many other things. Like in the first act, I thought when all this stuff was happening with this, he's about to get arrested, I thought the whole movie was going to be the first act. It was going to be that night in this event. And so I was like, oh, it's a movie that takes place in this night, and what's happening with this guy. I thought we were going to find out that Cumberbatch did it or whatever. And then we do this huge jump in time, and we get into the second act. So that was very interesting to me. It was jarring a little bit, but I was like, oh, this is super cool. Led me to a whole different place. I got war stuff, and so there's just so many different elements with romance and action and suspense, and I loved all that stuff with the story. My gripe with it is in the third act, I felt it was a bit rushed. One thing in particular I wasn't a fan of is that at the end, we get a lot of information, I feel like. Especially one thing was when she says that she has this disease, that she's losing her memory. And I felt like it came so quick and so sudden and so close to the end that I almost didn't have time to absorb it and sympathize with her, because right immediately after that, I find out that the actor and, James McAvoy and that Keira Knightley are both dead. Yeah. So now my sympathy is going to them. And so it's almost as if the whole her losing her memory thing, it didn't hit home like it should have. And I don't know if that's because the third act could have, maybe a little bit more time could have been allotted to it, or if there could have been a slight setup to that going to happen to her, or maybe something in the theme of how important it is to like hold on to your memory. I don't know. It didn't hit home with me like it should have. And I felt like a ton of info was just dropped in this like last bit. So yeah, I have to knock off a point for that.
Jose, how about you?
I love the storytelling in this movie. I love the way that it was written. I love the way that it was presented. I love. It's just like in discordance to what Nick is saying, because I was also very glad to get out of that situation at the beginning, to have Act 1 end and then move into the future, and then because it's a movie that goes. It accelerates. It feels that it's accelerating because it starts with this mellow situation that takes its time, that plays out, and then when it cuts for the first time in the future, then it doesn't take it as long to cut again into the future, and then that one is even shorter to the point that I don't know. It feels like life was fuller at the beginning, and now life is just creeping up on you. Things are moving so fast, also because of the world. I mean, you can create a million connotations out of this, but it didn't upset me. It didn't sit bad with me, especially when we go into the end, and then you find out that everything that you've been watching, it's not necessarily the interview, but it ties to her in that moment just coming. This is the moment that she's coming with the truth to the world. She's doing it on TV. She's going like, I lied and I did this and I ruined these two people's life, and then chances are like they probably died because of what I did, and I'm trying to redeem it. But it was interesting, and I will be interested in talking to Nick about this and to you after you see this movie again, because I knew that they were dead. Then I remember that the first time I saw this movie it was like, oh wow, they're together. I mean, this is great. I mean, whatever. Like this, like it ended up good. And then when she says that they're there, now I'm watching the movie. I know I knew already up to what point I'm seeing reality and up to what point I'm already seeing something that is not true. So it doesn't connect with me. Like
I
I
don't know if
see them.
that's true though, because I think her story at the end puts all of it in question to some extent.
I felt that way. I feel that I'm watching these two people finally being together, and it's not true. You know, I'm going. This is a really nice story, but this didn't. I mean, it took away knowing that it was going that way. It took something. It took something away from me. Like when I watch it, like again, but the narrative, like how did they just break it at the end, and then they go like they're jumping in time to her in the future, and you're like, oh wow, what did just happen? It didn't sink bad on me. I actually enjoyed to be able to see the culmination of the journey of her atonement. You know, like it's like that felt to me like very accurate. It is fast paced at the end.
One of the beefs that I have with this story is that I don't feel like she atones herself. It's like it's called atonement, but I didn't feel like she does. I don't think she accomplishes the goal of atonement, and I kept waiting for her to do something that would justify her atonement. And like she kind of imagines herself being able to do that, but then we find out that she didn't, and there is no atonement. And maybe, maybe I'm taking a little too literally. Maybe, there's a question mark on that atonement. There's a silent question mark.
Think of it in terms of like she wrote the book. I mean, if you're thinking of I take it away from the title of the movie that we watched. Put it in context of just the book that she wrote.
Even there, I feel like she's jumping the gun on that title. Like, the book is supposed to be her atonement for a crime by giving them this happy ending. I don't know if I agree with her notion of forgiveness and like redemption on this front. I think, and I kind of agree like with Nick in the third act being very abrupt, and there is a lot that comes at you. I also had this feeling when I was watching it, after she leaves from like meeting them, she meets them together after the wedding, and has that whole confrontation. I was like, why is the movie still going? I remember having this moment of just being like, okay, what now? And like, so I feel like it kills its own momentum right there. And then the only question going forward is, why am I still watching it? Like what? I am waiting for a reveal. I'm like, oh, what is it? But like, not in a way that I feel like I want to question that the movie presents. I don't want to just question, okay, what now? So I think that like in the overarching story, that was kind of a problem. And also, the most interesting stuff does happen at the beginning. Sort of the drama of fate kind of working in coincidence to create this, unfortunate event. And once the event happens, like, then there's no more mystery. Like I was like, okay, is Cumberbatch gonna get found out? Is he gonna get a comeuppance? Like, I guess, are they gonna get back together? But like, I just found the first half so intriguing that I feel like it undercuts its second half a little bit.
I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's all very opinion-based when it comes to story. And there's more than one way to skin a cat, obviously. But, yeah, for me, I do feel like there's just a lot more power and interest in the first half than in the second half. Because, the war stuff, we don't really see the war. So it's not really an obstacle. We see kind of life around the war. We see the casualty of that. I'm not exactly sure why we needed, like, why all the gore and, like, the horribleness of, like, they're nurses, and I appreciate seeing that viewpoint. I just didn't understand how that stuff kind of tied in with her drama and these two people, which is the heart of this story. So I felt like story elements, that there were extraneous elements, and that the first half is so much stronger than the half. Like, I didn't feel like it finished on a finale. Like, I didn't feel like it was a climax. When we find out they're dead, the way that it shows us, it was kind of like, it's a little heartbreaking, but I felt like it could have been a bigger punch. I feel like there was somewhat of a missed opportunity in the script there, that like we could have like really, like I wanted to feel it more. I wanted to feel the loss of them more, and I felt distant from it by that point, because we are physically distanced, and so I can't really blame sort of the editing or these other elements. I think it does come down to sort of the script itself, kind of pigeonholing the director to do, like, I think he did great with the script, but I think it could have been a little stronger itself. Cameron, why don't you give us some of your thoughts?
So I read the book before I saw the movie, but then this is like 8-9 years
so you
ago.
can kind of judge it as an adaptation too.
Correct. So I literally read the book and then saw the movie. Like, I finished it probably like within the same week or month or something. So it was still very fresh in my mind. And I don't really remember too much about the book right now, except that a lot of the emotional through line in the book and like the thoughts that the characters have get portrayed in the script extremely well. They go from being, the first act is them and all three of their lives, and it being the most important times in their lives, which is why I think the pacing kind of changes in the second and third, or the end of the second act and the third act, which feels very abrupt, because she's also dying. She also just got this very abrupt thing thrown on her. Like, when you get told you have something wrong with you, or you get sick, it's like all of a sudden, boom.
I don't know that we needed to know that information. I think I was with Nick on that. It comes very abruptly, and I think it's there to incite pity, that like she kind of is being punished, but like at the same time she's had a whole life to live, and she's written also, 20.
Yeah, they could have not used that.
I feel like I kind of felt like it was a cheap way to garner sympathy from someone who we learn just in the next moment never had a chance to redeem herself in real life.
I don't think you necessarily have to have sympathy for her. I don't think it necessarily would have been used as a sympathy card for Bryony at that age. I don't think it has to be. It can
so
be
why is
just
it there, then?
You can look at it. I have sympathy with her when I watch the film, but then I'm pissed at her. Like I have sympathy and I'm mad at her at the same time. And I think that was intentional. And from what I remember of the book, it's very much the same. The book, that and Todd Prada's Little Children are the two best book-to-film adaptations that I can think of.
That's another conversation.
Yeah, this is. I mean, like when you going from reading the book to seeing the movie and just being completely consumed with these characters in the story, and it hitting you the exact same way, and not feeling like you lost anything from the book. Like, I think that's just in itself, it gets a 5 from me for that.
It's a great accomplishment to do that between a book and a film.
Any thoughts on like kind of the dialogue or just the actual like words of the script?
But they're very good. Very good words.
Very good words.
I like the choice. They use a lot of big words.
Very good words. I mean, I like this might be just an issue of English being a second language, but like if you ask me to remember like lines from this movie, it's gonna be a little more difficult. I need to watch this movie with subtitles. Sometimes it's a little difficult to follow because
dialogue is very sparse in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
There were times actually I didn't understand what they were saying because of how thick the accent was. Actually, there was a few lines I missed.
One thing that I specifically remember, and I would relate it very much to I'll Never Let Go from Titanic, is when Keira Knightley's her recurrence of come back to me.
Oh, yeah.
That was
I think that in itself.
Oh, the whisper.
Oh, my favorite line in the movie is you bite the chocolate.
Bite it.
You have to bite.
You have to bite.
You have to bite.
Yeah, that was
We'll
get to that in the next chapter.
Indeed we will.
You guys didn't think that was sexy?
Oh god. Four for story. It was a really good story. 4.
4. Yeah,
John,
I'm kind of between 3 and 4. I feel like I talked myself down a little.
You talk yourself down. Look, I just want to bring
With your
this
heart.
up. I just want to bring this up because you mentioned it. I mean, you guys have been talking about a lot about like her interview and she talking about her disease and all the stuff. And I feel that one of the aspects of the movie is trying to cover is that the atonement is towards herself. Like once you got past the point in which you, like as you said, she was coward enough to confront, to go talk to her sister, and eventually by the time that she probably had the courage to it, both of them were dead. So then there's nothing else to do. Like she's the only one carrying that guilt. Nobody is still alive that she's hurting. Like the damage that she caused died with these two people. So then, but she's the only one that keeps it alive. So the atonement is not towards them. The atonement is towards her. And it brings you to the point, is like, if a person is responsible for destroying another person's life or for causing an extreme hardship on another person, do we need a sense of justice by saying your life should not be nice, you should be suffering too? Or will we just keeping the cycle in which sadness never ends? Because it's just saying, like, let's say you did something and then you caused this incredible pain. And then, as you're saying, you're trying, like Cameron said, like, I felt sympathy for her, but also I'm feeling like, I feel a little, angry with her. And what does that, like this movie brings that question to me, is like, what does that do? Like, if she does that and then I just keep nailing her down, like drilling it on her, like, then I'm ruining 3 lives, not just 2. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but that's kind of like saying, like, she feels responsible not just for their breakup, but for their deaths. Like,
no, I understand.
Events played out in such a way that, like, they might have been alive still had she. So, like, it's kind of like saying you caused somebody to die, and they're dead, so I'm off the hook.
No, I mean that's seeing it in a completely like disconnected way. What I'm saying is that yeah, these people are dead, and then you pay a penance, but if that penance is going to destroy your life, then it's 3 people who are dead, not just 2. And then that necessity that we have as humans to punish another person for something that they did, I feel that that's derogatory to the entire species. To have to just feel that mentality that a person, like, what does it do to punish a person in that sense?
I think that's why it's kind of not. I don't know if ironic's the right word to use here, but I'm going to use it. It's kind of ironic that she is going to die from something that she can't control.
Yes, correct, and something that's going to affect the thing that she treasures the most. So then we feel good about that. We see the movie, go like, "Oh, good for you." It's like, why do we have to feel good about that? Why? What is, I mean, I guess I don't know.
No, that's just my thoughts. I think you're making valid points. I'm not trying to discount any of that. I just like to test you, make sure your arguments hold up.
Got it.
I take it if Jose gave it a 5.
I get a 5.
You give it a 5? Yeah, there were other just questions I had. Like, in particular, an example of one is when she tells the story to the other nurse about how Robbie saved her. And then when she said, when I told him I loved him, like, that ended that.
I totally forgot about
that. Was that a scene in shadow? Like, you were paying attention to the lighting to see whether she was honest or not. I wanted more context for that in particular.
I actually thought we were going to go back to that moment. I forgot
so too.
Yeah, I thought we'd see that.
So I feel like there were things I wanted that I didn't get that the movie did set up. Like, it made me want these things. I didn't just want them, randomly, because you don't always get what you want in a movie, but I feel like, one of the strongest things you can do in a script is, like, set up and pay off. And whenever there's setups that don't have any kind of payoffs, it always grates on me a little bit.
Well, it's also an important bridge because we understand the relationship at that point. Before that, she jumps in the river, he gets really mad at her and yells and then walks off. The next time, really chronologically, is in the beginning of the film, and he's all hunky-dory with her. So it's an important kind of bridge that we missed out on of that, okay, he was pissed at her. Later in time, they're all cool and, everything's coup de la and shit. But we missed that moment of her being honest, saying something, and then him giving whatever reply he did that stopped that, but they were able to build off of that. And we didn't see that little bridge moment, which, I'd have preferred to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to just hate on the script because there are some really cool things that happen. One of my favorite scenes in terms of the writing is the fake memory where she meets the two of them. No, where she meets the two of them.
Oh, that's
because they're reading her subtext to her. Like when I thought about that scene in context of the fact that it didn't happen, and he says like, I was never anything to you aside from just the help. Like what I liked about that is that like that's the truest thing he could possibly say because it's her judgment of herself. So I did like that was something that like a scene I really loved. And there was a lot of good stuff. I think I'm back on a 4.
All right, there you go. 2 4s and 2 5s.
2 4s, 2 5s.
Oh boy, they got 2 more dings.
Yes.
97 is the max it can get now.
All right, well let's see what happens in our final category, which is performance.
This is what is gonna go to hell.
Is where it's gonna
go to hell, you think? Oh shit. Jose's like, I loved everything but the actors.
The actors are terrible.
What do you actually think, Jose?
Oh no, I mean this is like this movie. I'm like Cameron. This movie is all 5s for me. Like these people. I mean the fact, not only the fact that Keira Knightley is like the embodiment of classy in that time. Like she's meant for this
like
kind of
roles.
roles.
Genetically engineered to be in period pieces, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's just incredible. It's like it's incredible. But the way that she does it, like her mannerisms, the way that these people that you believe that these people live in those times and act in exactly the way that they do. Like I feel that the performance was right on point. Like like when sometimes you watch these movies and you can see through the actor. And then I don't know, like it pulls you off for a second. Like I don't feel that at any point in this movie. And and granted, there is a lot of it's a constant emotional roller coaster where these guys have to be put into these situations and have to react in complete different points in their life and saying, okay, now it's 5 years later and you have been dealing with this for this suffering for this amount of time, go. And then it's difficult to say, it's different than saying, oh, this is the space of time in which we will be, and then your character will be experiencing things that will be within this context. There is no time to process or anything like. It's always one single thing. These people had to act different stages of their life and consume and try to imagine how it is to have been feeling that way for this amount of time. And I think it was really on point. I think that these people did a marvelous job about making you believe, oh, this is Keira Knightley 5 years later, Keira Knightley's character 5 years later, how she feels, how it destroyed her life, how her mannerism changed, how she doesn't talk to her family. And you can see it, that she's only herself when she's next to him. With other people, she's completely different than the other character, the sassy, kind of like living the life kind of character that she was back in the mansion. She was grounded. And I love that. I love the way that they portrayed it.
All right. Yeah, one of the things I like to include when I'm thinking about performance is also casting. And this movie has the always challenging job of casting multiple people into a single role. I think Saoirse Ronan has just the craziest eyes in Hollywood. They're so powerful. They're so blue. They have the very dark rings around them that they do the work for her in a lot of ways. And I think that the older woman was a really good match for her. Mm-hmm. The middle version, I was less impressed with. She doesn't have that same kind of icy stare, and her role during those times maybe doesn't call for as much, though she is in the nursing home, and I feel the middle girl I wasn't crazy about. I love James McAvoy. He's one of my absolute favorites. Um, and I feel like he kind of knocks it out pretty much every single time he's on screen. And this is no exception to that. Keira Knightley's really good in this. She does like fit so well into these period pieces. Um, and I actually think this is probably the best performance I've seen her in, because she doesn't always, she's not always sort of the standout one. And I think she has to carry a lot of this movie. It's kind of equal parts. And I think she really, like, this is a standout performance for her, like really good on her resume, so to speak.
This is because you've never seen Bender Like Beckham.
I have seen Bender Like Beckham.
That is ultimately her performance.
Yeah, I mean, that one allows her to get a little crazy. This is a more nuanced performance. And she does go through a wide range of emotions here, and has to deal with, both the sort of typical romantic sort of love and all of that, but also a lot of pain and just like, and determination. Like, I like that we never, like, from her, I never got a hint of doubt as to, like, did McAvoy do this? And I like that, like, I feel like that's where the movie could have really gone off the rails. Both either in the writing or the performance, I think, could have lost me on that. And she really kind of kept me there. Benedict Cumberbatch, it's fun to see him now that I know who he is.
Yes.
Because nobody knew who he was when this came out.
I was thinking the same thing when I was watching.
I don't know. The character roles in the film, I think, are pretty forgettable for the most part. There wasn't a whole lot outside of the core cast that really stuck with me.
Yeah, like the brother, the mother, the father, like they don't.
Yeah, they're just kind of there and gone. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Cameron? I mean, I know it's going to be good thoughts.
It's going to be a 5. However, I just like you said, John, the middle Bryony, played by Romola Gary, I do have some beefs with her performance. The reason that I still give it a 5 is because the scene that I do have the biggest beef with her is the same one where she goes to their apartment at the end of the second act. And I really like the editing, so the editing picks it up. But James McAvoy also, I think if it was anybody other than James McAvoy, actors support each other in their scenes. Like, they only work off what they give, and he brought her up in that scene, in my opinion. Like, there's this one moment where he is just berating her, and like he will not stop, and she gets so breathy and so caught up, and there's certain things in that scene that I did have a little beef with, but James McAvoy brings it back up for me, and I think he was robbed of an Oscar nomination, to be quite honest. I thought he was fantastic.
They DiCaprio'd him.
Yes, they DiCaprio'd him.
And I also think even the smaller roles, down to the little boys, the two little boys, Jackson and Piero, and their sister Lola. Juno Temple plays Lola. She's now becoming quite an up-and-coming actress, and I think she's fantastic. Like, I completely saw in just Lola's performance, this smaller character, I saw her despair over the fact that her famous parents are getting thrown about all over the tabloids. Like, I saw that in her face. Like, I could feel it. And then, the scene when she's getting laid on the bed after she's been raped, I felt it. And like that, she was probably like 14 or 15 when she was, when she filmed that. Like, so even, obviously James McAvoy, Keira Knightley, Vanessa Redgrave, they're all fantastic. And then the smaller roles. And then you have Saoirse Ronan, who's just her complete own thing in this film. Because she was 12 when she filmed it, 13 when she got her nomination.
She was nominated for this?
She was the only person nominated in the acting category for this film.
Yeah, McAvoy was robbed.
One of the best child performances I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And I'm very picky about children in movies and TV shows and stuff. Like, I either really like them or I hate them, and she nailed it. Juno Temple nailed it. The two boys that played her brothers nailed it.
I don't know if I would agree that I feel like there are a number of child performances I can think of that are more standout. But it really was very good. I didn't have an issue with it.
And even going to in the nurses hospital in the second act, Bryony's friend that comes up to listen to the story. Like I just felt like everybody was completely real, and I think this probably has something to do with Joe Wright being able to just bring everybody into that world as a director too, getting everybody on the same page, because everybody can go and research that time period and come up with like a different way to emote what it feels like to be in those clothes and everything. But I think everybody got it, and I the only beef that I would have been just a couple of moments with the 18-year-old Bryony, but she's brought up by her fellow actors. So, and I think that is a sign of a really good ensemble cast, is that even if there are slight moments where performance falters, it's brought up by somebody else.
How about you, Nick?
I thought the acting in the movie was very good. I don't think it was perfect. I thought it was very good, though. I'd give it a 4. For me to give it a 5, it's just something has to really blow me away. As far as the middle Bryony, I actually liked her. I just felt I got what she was playing. I really felt like she was way less strong than the first Bryony, but I think it's because she wasn't a strong person anymore. Obviously, we missed that arc that happened of sometime in between being that little girl and now being a nurse. There was that shift where she realized she did the wrong thing and all this, but she just seemed like a broken version, and I thought it came out good. I didn't have any beefs with her. I think I had more beefs with maybe side people. I love Benedict Cumberbatch. I think he's awesome. He has like one of the best voices. I did not confirm this. I felt like there were a few scenes where the director's skill with the theatrics played in where it felt theatrical. Like it felt like it was a stage sometimes, especially the bite the chocolate scene. That scene, I was kind of snickering a lot at it because I was like, wow, this guy is an obvious creep. Like, can you ogle someone with your eyes anymore? Like, could you be any more obvious? And I felt like if it just wasn't so over the top, that kind of direction, especially with that character, I felt like in the first act you would have kept up this little mystery. Like, you could have kept up the idea of, did McAvoy maybe do it? Maybe you could have.
There was no question of who it was.
There was no question. The second she went out and I saw a second of that light, I was like, yeah, it was Willy Wonka. It was that chocolate guy out there. And I was like, it was obviously him. And it was like a red flag on top of him the whole time. So yeah, there was a few times where I felt it was a bit theatrical. It was very good, the acting overall. I think McAvoy and Keira Knightley, who I'm usually not like a huge fan of, was great in it.
She can be very bland, and she's not in this film. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it was very good. I'd give it a 4.
Give it a 4. Jose, did we
5?
Did we get you? Yeah, you got your thoughts in.
Yeah,
I think I'm with Nick at a 4, just because I feel like to give it a 5.
Oh man,
I would really need to.
It's got to be in it. No,
yeah, I feel like to give it a 5, I would really need to absolutely adore the whole cast, and I adore some of the cast, and some of it I was very easy to forget, or there's a lot of fairly inconsequential characters, and I guess it's not always the actor's fault for that, but I feel like sometimes you get performances from small characters that really draw your attention and make you love them for whatever reason, and I didn't get that from really any of the side characters. I mean, I do think a lot of, the twins were well cast.
When he's, in the war, his curly-haired friend that's always, mouthing off, the one that throws the boots, he really stands out to me.
He's fun.
James McAvoy's mother character stands out to me. She's the servant.
She didn't stand out to me. To me, I felt like her performance as the mom was very functional, but I didn't fall in love with his mom. I didn't fall in love with Mom.
Or the way she performed her line where she says she's not like your father, not in any way. Just that line, made me love her because I completely understood everything about the relationship between the two of them. And to be able to
give points to the writing, I don't know that her performance.
She's only in 2 scenes, right?
She's
only in the house.
She also bangs on the car.
Then she comes back when he's hallucinating in the war.
Mm-hmm.
Oh right, yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, she's got 3. I don't know that I didn't necessarily love the car banging. I don't know. She didn't.
I didn't even notice it was her.
I guess I just don't agree on those points. Like, I don't feel like her performance elevated the script in those moments. And you know, it's subjective, but yeah, I think I'm on a 4 for all that.
Is that a 95 in total?
Yeah, wait, is that all the categories?
That
That's
is
it, yeah.
all the categories. Give me just.
It's got a super high score. I think it's a 95.
I think so too.
What do you,
I think isn't that the highest?
You gave performance a 4, right? And
Yeah, I gave
Jose, you gave
4.
all 5s?
Yes.
All 5s. So yeah,
And I'm
95.
like, too, just
95. That is our highest. Our previous highest was 87. That was Amelie.
Amelie got an 87?
Amelie
What
got
the
an 87.
fuck?
Yeah,
Who was
listen
that?
to it. Find out what we thought. Go back and watch the show. Yeah, really good movie. I'm glad we watched it. Thank you, Cameron, for joining us.
Thank you.
Nick, Jose, as always, thank you so much. Jose, where can folks find you online?
Jose in Paradox, that's in Twitter, and JAVCH2 in Instagram.
Yeah, you know you can change those names.
I know.
I'm just saying. Just saying.
Just say.
You can find me at John in Paradox. It's JON in Paradox on both Instagram and Twitter. Do either of you have social media? I know Nick doesn't have anything.
You can find me on the corner of Sunset and Highland.
Good luck finding me. I don't have social media either. So
all right. So thank you guys so much for joining
We're in the
us.
deep web.
Yeah. For the rest of
like
us,
the rotary phone.
rotary phone. Got it.
1-800-BABE.
You gotta ask the operator to patch you through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For everything else, find us on Facebook at facebook.com/movieclubcollective. You can also find us on YouTube. If you type in MCC podcast, you can find us that way. On Facebook, we post a link for the movie or for the podcast every week. We let you know where you can find the movie if it's available streaming, and we update what the next movie is going to be so you can watch it ahead of time. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Until next time.
Thank you.
Good night.
This has been a J Squared production.